Following the refusal led structure, buried recovery clue, child catalyst, costly reversal, quiet vindication, and dignity-centered payoff from your uploaded framework. At 1:37 in the morning, Jonah Hale found a blue file that was not supposed to exist. It was wedged behind a rusted drawer in the basement archive of St. Aldwyn Medical Center, beneath 2 boxes of outdated insurance forms and a layer of dust thick enough to hide a fingerprint. The hospital had paid Jonah to digitize records before the old wing was demolished. Scan the pages, verify the patient number, destroy the paper. That was the whole job. But the name printed across the front of the file made him stop. Maris Bellamy. 3 years earlier, Maris had entered St. Aldwyn after a highway collision. She had left in a wheelchair after several respected specialists concluded that her spinal cord injury was complete. No meaningful nerve pathway remained. No surgery could restore movement. She would never walk again. The conclusion had been repeated in court filings, insurance reports, corporate documents, and every article written about the billionaire chief executive's return to work. Jonah opened the missing file. The first page contained a handwritten sentence circled twice in red ink. Motor signals remain present below the injury. Immediate imaging review recommended. Do not classify as complete. Jonah read it again. Then he noticed the date. The note had been written 9 hours after Maris was told her paralysis was permanent. If this story already has you wondering who made that file disappear, tap like and tell me where you are watching from. Because the missing pages did not merely contain a medical mistake. They contained the beginning of a plan to take everything Maris Bellamy had built. Jonah was 35 years old, a widower, and the father of a 7-year-old girl who believed every locked door existed because someone had misplaced the key. His daughter's name was Piper. She had curly brown hair, serious gray eyes, and the exhausting habit of asking one more question after every adult believed a conversation was finished. Jonah had once admired that quality in another person. Rachel, his wife, had questioned everything. She questioned restaurant bills, weather forecasts, instructions printed on furniture, and doctors who answered too quickly. Then one doctor told her the lump beneath her arm was probably harmless. The biopsy was performed. The laboratory result was routed to the wrong clinic. For 11 weeks, the report remained unopened inside a digital queue. By the time Rachel received the diagnosis, the cancer had spread. Jonah spent the final year of her life learning that records were not passive objects. They moved decisions. They opened treatment. They closed options. They became truth when no one checked whether they were correct. After Rachel died, Jonah left his job as a hospital network administrator. The work required night emergencies, constant travel, and more time away from Piper than either of them could endure. He took temporary contracts instead. Data entry, equipment inventory, archive conversion. Anything with predictable hours and no expectation that he would answer a phone while helping his daughter sleep. The St. Aldwyn project was supposed to last 6 weeks. The hospital was closing its original trauma wing and transferring 40 years of paper records into a new digital system. Most files had already been processed. Jonah worked at night because the demolition crews began at dawn. He usually liked the silence. That night, the silence felt different. The blue file contained 73 pages, surgical notes, nursing reports, neurological monitoring graphs, a radiology request, a medication list, and a report from a company called Meridian Neurodiagnostics, whose technicians had monitored nerve signals during Maris Bellamy's spinal surgery. The official medical record stated that all useful signals had disappeared before the operation ended. The paper report in Jonah's hands showed something else. The signals had weakened. They had not disappeared. 2 pages later, a technician had written that Maris moved her left great toe while sedated. The note had been signed, then crossed out. Jonah turned to the imaging request. Urgent MRI, possible postoperative compression. The request carried a scheduling stamp. No result followed it. Instead, someone had placed a yellow sheet inside the file. Imaging order canceled. Reason? Duplicate request. Jonah checked the patient number. It matched Maris. He checked the surgical date. It matched. He checked the physician. Doctor. Nathan Kessler, chief of spinal surgery at St. Aldwyn. Jonah leaned back from the desk. He was not a doctor. He understood that. A preserved nerve signal did not mean Maris could walk. A cancelled MRI did not prove negligence. A handwritten observation could be wrong. But a file containing contradictory evidence should have been inside her medical record. It should not have been hidden behind a broken archive drawer. Jonah opened the hospital's conversion system and searched for the file number. No result. He searched Maris's patient identifier. Her official record appeared. The admission was there. The operation was there. The discharge summary was there. The blue file was not. Jonah examined the archive label. It had originally belonged to another patient. Marion Bell, room 418. Someone had crossed out the name and written Maris Bellamy beneath it. Similar names. Same floor. Same week. An ordinary clerical mistake was possible. Jonah had learned that ordinary mistakes could still kill people. He scanned the barcode. The system rejected it. He tried manual entry. A warning appeared. Restricted patient. Contact record supervisor. Jonah called the number listed in the project instructions. His supervisor, Denise Parker, answered on the fourth ring. Do you know what time it is? I'm in the basement archive. I assumed that from the internal number. I found an unprocessed surgical file. Put it in the exception bin. It belongs to Maris Bellamy. The line became quiet. Did you open it? I had to identify it. You were supposed to check the cover. The cover was altered. Jonah, close the file. There are clinical documents that do not appear in her electronic record. Close it. The official chart says her intraoperative signals disappeared. This report says they remained. Denise lowered her voice. You are a contract records technician. I know. You are not authorized to interpret medical records. I'm not interpreting them. I'm telling you they are missing from the chart. Place the file on my desk and leave the archive. The building remains open until 5. Your shift is over. It isn't. It is now. Jonah looked at the blue folder. Will you notify the patient? I will follow hospital procedure. What procedure? Do not begin this. Begin what? The thing where you decide a discrepancy means everyone else is careless. I didn't say everyone. You have done this before. Jonah said nothing. Denise knew about Rachel. Most supervisors learned eventually. They learned because Jonah checked dates twice, signatures 3 times, and every rejected file until he understood why it had been rejected. Leave the file on my desk, Denise repeated. Do not scan it. Do not photograph it. Do not contact anyone. The call ended. Jonah remained seated. The archive ventilation system hummed above him. On the table beside the file sat a small brass heron no taller than his hand. It had fallen from between the medical pages when he opened the folder. One wing was bent. A thin chain passed through its base, as though the figurine had once been attached to a bag or key ring. Jonah examined it without removing it from the table. The underside carried 2 engraved letters. M.B. It belonged to Maris. Or it had. He returned the heron to the file and closed the cover. At 2:06, Jonah carried the folder upstairs. Denise's office was dark. He placed the file in the center of her desk. Then he opened the hospital conversion log and entered a formal exception notice. Unindexed patient documents discovered. Possible identity mismatch. Clinical review required. The system assigned a tracking number. Jonah wrote it on his hand. He left. At 7 the next morning, the tracking notice had been deleted. By 8, Denise claimed the blue folder had never reached her desk. At 8:15, hospital security suspended Jonah's access. At 9, his contracting agency informed him that St. Aldwyn had removed him from the project because he had mishandled restricted information. Jonah sat inside his 10-year-old sedan outside Piper's school and listened to the agency representative explain that no further shifts were available. We may reconsider after the hospital completes its review, the woman said. How long? I don't know. What happened to the file? I have no information about a file. The hospital asked you to terminate my access because of it. The hospital reported a policy violation. What policy? You accessed a protected celebrity record without authorization. I found it in the archive I was hired to process. You should speak to an attorney. With what income? I'm sorry. The call ended. Children began leaving the school. Piper emerged wearing a purple coat and carrying a cardboard model of the solar system. Saturn had lost one of its rings. She saw Jonah and ran toward the car. He opened the door. What happened to Saturn? Logan sat on it. Why? He said he didn't. That does not answer my question. He also didn't answer it. She placed the model carefully across the back seat. You came early. The job ended. Forever? Maybe. Did you finish? No, then why did it end? Jonah closed the door. Someone did not like a question I asked. Piper strapped herself in. Was it a rude question? No. Personal? No. Was it about money? No. Then maybe they knew the answer was bad. Jonah looked at her in the rearview mirror. You are 7, almost 8. That does not explain how you think. Mom asked questions. Jonah started the car. Yes, she did. They drove home through a cold Philadelphia rain. Their apartment occupied the second floor of an aging brick building where the pipes made noise whenever anyone used hot water. Jonah's neighbor, Mrs. Cardenas, watched Piper after school during his night shifts. She greeted them at the stairwell. You're home early. The contract ended. Mrs. Cardenas looked at Piper. Your father and I need 1 minute. That means money. Go wash your hands, Jonah said. Piper carried Saturn upstairs. Mrs. Cardenas waited until the apartment door closed. Rent? I can cover this month. And next, I'll find something. You always say that. I usually do. You look worried. I found a medical file at the hospital. Mrs. Cardenas crossed her arms. Does this involve the look you get when you think everyone else has missed something? Yes, that look has cost you 3 jobs. 2. The clinic contract. They were deleting equipment inspection records. The insurance office. They were changing claim dates. This one. The patient may have been given the wrong prognosis. Mrs. Cardenas's expression changed. What patient? I can't tell you. Then why are you telling me? Because I don't know what to do. That admission was rare enough to make her quiet. What would Rachel tell you? Jonah looked toward the apartment window. She would tell me the patient deserves to know. What would Rachel tell you about taking care of Piper? That she deserves stability. Can you do both? I don't know. Mrs. Cardenas nodded. That is a better answer. At 10 that night, Jonah entered the deleted tracking number into the hospital's public records request portal. The notice still existed in a backup log. It showed that Denise had opened it at 6:12 that morning. At 6:19, the notice had been closed by an administrator account assigned to the hospital's legal department. Jonah wrote down the administrator's name. Gerald Pike. He searched the name publicly. Gerald was St. Aldwyn's chief legal officer. He had also served on the charitable board of Bellamy Civic Technologies, the company founded by Maris Bellamy. Jonah's concern became something sharper. The hospital had not simply misplaced the file. Someone important had reacted within hours. He searched for Maris's public office. Bellamy Civic Technologies occupied 30 floors of a tower near the Schuylkill River. Its systems managed freight routes, water networks, hospital logistics, and emergency supply chains across dozens of American cities. Maris had founded the company at 26. At 34, she became one of the youngest self-made women in the country to control a company valued above $10 billion. At 36, a delivery truck struck the rear of her car on an icy highway. The impact forced the vehicle beneath the highway barrier. Maris survived with multiple fractures and a severe spinal injury. She returned to the company after 11 months. The press called her return extraordinary. Employees described it differently. Demanding, unforgiving, cold, 7 senior assistants resigned during her first year back. Her engagement ended. Her father, who had chaired the company's board, died the following spring. And Dorian Pike, Gerald Pike's older brother, became board chairman. Jonah stared at the screen. 2 brothers. One controlled the hospital's legal department. The other controlled the board of Maris's company. That could be coincidence. Jonah had also learned that coincidences became less innocent when powerful people benefited from them. He found Maris's residential address inside a public property record. A modern stone house overlooking the river. Jonah closed the page. Going to her home would violate every professional boundary he had ever followed. He did not possess the file. He had no evidence except a deleted tracking number in his memory. He could be accused of harassment. He could lose future hospital work permanently. He could make everything worse. Piper entered the kitchen carrying the brass heron. Jonah stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. "Where did you get that?" "It was in your coat pocket." He stared at the figurine. He had returned it to the blue file. He remembered doing it. Then he remembered placing his gloves on the archive table before leaving. The heron must have caught inside the lining when he picked them up. Piper turned it in her fingers. "One wing is bent. Put it down carefully." "Is it expensive?" "I don't know." "Whose is it?" "The patient's." "The person with the missing file?" Jonah looked at her. "You heard me talking to Mrs. Cardenas. The door was open. It was closed. The vent carries sound." He took the heron and placed it on the table. "It needs to go back." "To the hospital?" Jonah thought about the deleted notice. "No." Piper studied him. "You know who it belongs to." "Yes." "Then give it to her." "It is not that simple. It is if you know the address." "How do you know I found the address?" "You look at the computer differently when you find something." Jonah rubbed his forehead. "Go to bed. That means I'm right. It means school begins in 9 hours. Piper reached for the heron again but stopped before touching it. "It still stands." "What?" "The bird. Its wing is bent, but it still stands." Jonah looked at the small brass feet resting against the table. The heron leaned slightly to one side. It did not fall. At 7:30 the next morning, Jonah stood outside Maris Bellamy's home with the brass heron inside a padded envelope. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. A camera above the door moved toward him. A woman's voice came through the speaker. "State your name and purpose." "Jonah Hale." "I need to return something to Miss Bellamy." "Leave the package." "I need to speak with her." "Ms. Bellamy does not accept unplanned visitors. It concerns her medical record." The speaker went silent. 30 seconds passed. Then the door opened. A woman in her late 50s stood inside, wearing a dark green sweater and an expression that made Jonah feel he had already failed an examination. "I am Rosa Wynn," she said. "I manage the residence." "Jonah Hale, you worked at St. Aldwyn until yesterday." "That is not reassuring. I found an item belonging to Miss Bellamy. Give it to me." Jonah held the envelope. "I also found a file." Rosa's eyes changed. "What file?" "A post-surgical monitoring report that does not appear in her official record." "Do you have it?" "No." "Then what exactly are you bringing?" "An object that was inside it and a tracking number proving the file entered the hospital review system." Rosa looked behind him. "Are you alone?" "Yes. Do you have a recording device?" "My phone. Turn it off." Jonah did. Rosa opened the door wider. The house was designed around glass, stone, and open spaces. Ramps were built into the architecture so carefully that they looked like part of the original design. Maris waited in a study overlooking the river. Her wheelchair was matte black with silver rims and narrow front casters. She wore a dark blue suit, although it was not yet 8 in the morning. A brass heron-shaped lamp stood on the desk beside her. Jonah noticed the similarity immediately. Maris noticed the envelope. "You found the smaller one." Her voice was calm, not warm. "Yes, where?" "Inside a medical folder." "What medical folder?" "One containing records from your surgery." Maris looked at Rosa. "Leave us." Rosa hesitated. "Please," Maris said. The door closed. Maris extended her hand. Jonah gave her the envelope. She removed the brass heron and held it in her palm. The hardness in her expression shifted. "My mother gave me this when I started the company," she said. "I carried it on my bag. It was inside the missing file. How did it get there?" "I don't know. The hospital returned my belongings after the accident. This was not included. Maybe it remained in the trauma unit." "For 3 years?" "Possibly." Maris placed it beside the lamp. "What was in the file?" Jonah explained. He used careful words. Signal, observation, canceled imaging request. Contradiction, he did not use miracle. He did not say recovery. He did not say walk. Maris listened without interrupting. When he finished, she looked at the tracking number written on a notepad. You expect me to believe that every specialist who reviewed my injury missed a report found by a temporary records clerk. I expect you to verify it. The hospital already reviewed my full chart. This file wasn't in the chart. You do not know whether the report was accurate. No. You do not know whether the signal belonged to me. No. You do not know whether the canceled MRI would have changed anything. No. Maris leaned back. Then what do you know? I know someone deleted the exception notice after the file reached your hospital's records supervisor. Who? An account controlled by Gerald Pike. Maris became completely still. My board chairman's brother. Yes, you researched me. I researched the account. That is a careful distinction. It is also true. She turned toward the river. Dorian has served my company for 14 years. I didn't accuse him. You came to my home with a story involving his brother. I came to return the heron. You could have mailed it. Yes, you wanted access to me. I wanted you to know there was a file. Why? Jonah looked at the second brass heron on her desk. Because someone should have told my wife when her report was missing. Maris turned back. He had not planned to tell her. The words were already in the room. What happened? A pathology result was routed to the wrong clinic. She received it 11 weeks late. And she died. Yes, I am sorry. Thank you. Maris studied him. You believe my case allows you to correct hers? No. Then why risk your job? I already lost it. That did not answer me. Jonah almost smiled. His daughter would have approved of Maris's persistence. I know what can happen when a missing record is treated as an administrative inconvenience. Maris looked at the tracking number again. What do you want? Nothing. Everyone wants something. I want you to request the file through an independent attorney. That is something. Not from you. She stared at him. Most people who entered Maris's home wanted employment, investment, influence, forgiveness, access, or money. Jonah wanted her to make a records request. It made him difficult to categorize. She disliked uncategorized things. Rosa will take your contact information, she said. Will you request the file? That is no longer your concern. It became my concern when the hospital accused me of accessing it improperly. Her eyes narrowed. You want protection. I want the truth documented. You are not entitled to it. No, then we understand each other. Jonah stood. At the door, Maris spoke. The technician's note. He turned. What exactly did it say? Jonah repeated it. Motor signals remain present below the injury. Immediate imaging review recommended. Do not classify as complete. Maris's right hand tightened against the wheelchair rim. That language would not guarantee recovery. No, it may refer to electrical noise. Yes, the toe movement could have been a reflex. Yes, you agree with every objection. They're valid. Then why are you still standing there? Because valid objections are reasons to investigate, not reasons to erase the file. Maris looked at him for a long moment. Leave your number with Rosa. By noon, Maris had instructed her personal attorney to request every original paper and digital record connected to her surgery. At 2 St., Aldwyn replied that no blue file existed. At 4, Gerald Pike called her personally. He described Jonah as an unstable former contractor who had developed an unhealthy interest in her medical history. Maris placed the call on speaker while Rosa listened. Did he access my restricted record? Maris asked. He opened materials he had no authorization to review. Were the materials mine? We cannot confirm that. You just said he accessed my record. I said he claimed to have found a file bearing your name. Was the file reviewed? There is no file. Then what did he open? Gerald paused. Maris noticed. Mr. Pike? The hospital is conducting an internal investigation into a file that does not exist. We are investigating Mr. Hale's conduct. Why was his exception notice deleted? Another pause. How did you obtain that information? That was not my question. Mistakes occur during conversion projects. Was deleting the notice a mistake? I cannot discuss internal security. You contacted me. Because I am concerned someone may exploit your condition. Maris's expression became cold. My condition has no relevance to whether your hospital lost a document. Of course. Then do not mention it again. She ended the call. Rosa stood beside the desk. He is frightened. Or offended. You know the difference. Maris looked at the small brass heron. Call Jonah Hale. He returned that evening carrying no toolbox and wearing the same dark jacket. Rosa showed him into the study. Maris had prepared a list of questions. Where exactly was the file located? What records surrounded it? Which pages contained original signatures? Did the paper appear 3 years old? Was the handwriting consistent? Did the monitoring graphs contain patient identifiers? How had the heron entered his coat? Jonah answered everything he could. When he did not know, he said so. Maris found that unusual. Executives often filled uncertainty with confidence. Doctors used longer words. Lawyers restated the question. Jonah simply admitted the gap. I need you to reconstruct the file, she said. I can't reconstruct 73 pages from memory. You can identify the documents. Most of them. You can tell my attorney where to search. Yes, you can assist with the audit, if the hospital gives access. They will not. Then what audit? My company maintains contracts with St. Aldwyn. Bellamy Civic designed its supply chain platform and part of its patient identity system. Jonah understood. You have audit rights. Limited ones. And Gerald's brother chairs your board. Yes. Does Dorian know about the file? I asked him. What did he say? That I should not allow a records clerk to reopen the most painful period of my life. Jonah looked at her. That isn't an answer. No. Maris pushed a contract across the desk. 30 days. Independent data consultant. The fee was more than Jonah had earned during the previous 4 months. He read it twice. There's a confidentiality clause preventing me from reporting evidence without your approval. You would work for me. I won't conceal misconduct. It protects company information. It also covers hospital information discovered through the company audit. Maris's expression hardened. You are negotiating an executive contract from my study. Yes, you need the work. Yes, then why make this difficult? Because needing money does not make every condition acceptable. She looked at him. There was no performance in his face, no attempt to impress her. He truly was prepared to leave. Maris removed the clause. Anything else? Work ends by 6. This investigation may require evenings. I collect my daughter from Mrs. Cardenas at 6:30. You could hire childcare. I could. I won't. You are declining overtime? I am defining the schedule. Maris placed the revised contract before him. You are irritating. So I've been told. By whom? My daughter. Jonah signed. The first week produced little. St. Aldwyn provided system logs stripped of identifying information. The archive camera had been offline for maintenance. Denise Parker refused to speak with Jonah. Meridian Neurodiagnostics had dissolved 2 years earlier after being acquired by a national provider. Its local office was empty. Dr. Nathan Kessler, the surgeon who signed Maris's discharge summary, agreed to a video meeting. He was 62, composed and careful. I remember the operation clearly, he said. Miss Bellamy suffered a severe thoracic spinal injury with extensive damage. Was the cord completely severed? Jonah asked. Doctor, Kessler looked toward Maris. Anatomical severing is not required for a clinically complete injury. That was not the question, Maris said. No. The cord was not physically divided. Were motor signals detected after surgery? Transient electrical activity can occur without useful function. Were they detected? Doctor, Kessler paused. I would need the original monitoring data. The hospital says it does not exist. Then I cannot answer. Did you request an urgent MRI? Postoperative imaging is routine. Was mine canceled? I do not remember. Maris placed the brass heron beside her keyboard. Jonah noticed she kept it close during difficult conversations. Did I move my toe? She asked. Doctor, Kessler's face changed slightly. Many involuntary movements occur after spinal trauma. Did it happen? I do not recall. Jonah opened a page from the official chart. The nursing note at 4:20 that morning says no movement was observed. That supports the diagnosis. The missing file contained a technician's note from 2:14. Doctor, Kessler became still. You said you did not possess the file. I saw it. Mr. Hale is not qualified to interpret neurophysiological records. I'm qualified to read a time. Maris glanced at him. Doctor, Kessler removed his glasses. My concern is that isolated fragments are creating expectations no responsible physician should encourage. No one has encouraged me, Maris said. This investigation itself may produce false hope. Hope is not the issue. Then what is? Consent. The doctor remained quiet. Maris continued. I made decisions based on the record your hospital gave me. I ended rehabilitation programs. I declined additional surgical opinions. I reorganized my company and my estate. If relevant information existed, I had the right to see it. I agree. Then help us find it. I will contact the hospital. No. Contact me. Doctor. Kessler looked uncomfortable. Through your attorney? Directly, that may not be appropriate. Neither was losing my file. The call ended. Jonah expected anger. Maris turned toward the window instead. What? I didn't say anything. You are thinking loudly. I'm wondering why he remembered the toe movement only after we mentioned the time. He did not admit remembering it. He stopped speaking like a doctor and started speaking like a witness. Maris looked at the heron. My father trusted him. Your father? Doctor, Kessler operated on his back years ago. They became friends. And Dorian? Dorian was my father's legal advisor before joining the board. The circle tightened. Maris saw it too. That evening, Jonah's childcare arrangement failed. Mrs. Cardenas had to take her sister to an emergency clinic. Piper's school program ended at 4:30. Jonah informed Maris that he would leave early. We have a call with Meridian's acquiring company at 5, she said. Move it. They are in California. Then schedule tomorrow. They offered one time. I'll review the recording. They will not permit recording. Jonah closed his laptop. Then I'll miss the call. Maris stared at him. You are willing to delay information that may affect my health because of a school pickup. Yes, you could bring your daughter here. He stopped. Maris appeared almost as surprised as he was. Rosa is present, she added. The house has space. You dislike unplanned visitors. This would be planned. Piper asked questions. So do you. That is different. I doubt it. Piper arrived at 5 wearing her purple coat and carrying a backpack shaped like a fox. She entered the study, saw Maris, and stopped. Jonah had explained that Maris used a wheelchair. He had also explained that Piper should not ask about it unless Maris mentioned it first. Piper followed the instruction for almost 30 seconds. Your chair has lights. Maris looked at the small blue safety lights beneath the frame. Yes, are they for cars? They make the chair visible at night. Can they change color? No, they should. Jonah placed her backpack beside the sofa. Homework, Piper sat down. She noticed the 2 brass herons. One is bigger. My mother gave me both, Maris said. The smaller one was lost. My dad found it. Yes. The wing is bent. Yes, Piper looked at the larger heron lamp, whose wings were perfect. Do you like the bent one more? Maris's fingers rested near the figurine. I thought I had lost it. That's not an answer. Jonah looked at the ceiling. Maris looked at him. She gets that from her mother, he said. Is her mother joining us? No. Piper's pencil stopped. My mom died. Maris's expression softened. I am sorry. Thank you. Piper returned to her mathematics sheet with the practiced acceptance of a child who had heard the sentence many times. During the call, Jonah spoke with Meridian's former records manager. Maris listened. The company's neurological recordings had been stored on physical optical discs as well as hospital servers. After the acquisition, old discs were sent to an off-site medical storage facility. Were they organized by hospital? Jonah asked. By procedure date and technician code. Can they be searched by patient? Not reliably. The older files used local identifiers. Who monitored Maris Bellamy's surgery? The records manager hesitated. I cannot disclose patient information. Maris moved closer to the screen. I am Maris Bellamy. We would still need a release. You have it. Her attorney transmitted the document. The manager reviewed it. The monitoring technician was Evan Rusk. Where is he? Jonah asked. He died 18 months ago. Maris lowered her eyes. Did he have a technician code? ER7. The storage facility contained more than 12,000 disks. An immediate search would cost $40,000 and take several weeks. Maris approved the expense without blinking. Piper raised her hand from the sofa. Maris stared at her. Do you need something? You said $40,000. Yes. For looking through boxes? Yes. That is a lot. It is. Dad looks through boxes. Jonah turned. Homework. Piper ignored him. You could pay Dad less. Maris's mouth moved slightly. Your father would object to that arrangement. He objects to expensive things. I have noticed. After the call, Piper approached the desk. Can I see the bird? Maris hesitated, then handed her the smaller heron. Piper turned it carefully. It leans. The wing was damaged. No, the feet are uneven. Maris leaned closer. Piper placed the figurine on the desk. One foot rested higher than the other because a small piece of dried material covered the base. Piper scratched it gently with her fingernail. A strip of blue adhesive came away. Beneath it was a handwritten number. 4187B. Jonah recognized it immediately. Room 488. The false archive label had named Marion Bell, Room 488. The heron had probably been bagged with the other patient's belongings before someone realized the mistake. 7B could be a property bag number, Jonah said. Maris looked at him. Can we trace it? If the hospital kept the chain of custody log? Piper placed the heron down. I helped. Yes, Maris said. You did. Piper smiled. That was the first genuine smile Maris returned. The property log changed everything. Bag 4187B had originally been assigned to Maris. 20 minutes later, the entry had been altered to Marion Bell. The same correction appeared on a surgical paper transfer sheet. Someone had combined the two patients' materials during a shift change. That could explain how the blue file was misplaced. It did not explain why Gerald Pike deleted the notice once Jonah found it. The next morning, Dorian Pike visited Maris's home. He was 56, silver-haired, and known for remaining calm while everyone else became emotional. Rosa brought him into the study. He looked at Jonah as though the consultant had been left behind by a delivery service. We need to speak privately, Dorian said. Jonah is working for me. On medical matters? On data provenance. You hired a terminated records clerk to investigate St. Aldwyn. I hired the person who found the file. Dorian looked toward the small heron. Gerald told me about his claims. His claims were supported by the property log. Mistakes in a hospital archive do not change your injury. Then why are both of you working so hard to stop the review? Dorian sat across from her. I am trying to protect you. From a record request? From people who profit by offering impossible outcomes. Jonah said nothing. Dorian continued. The company is preparing for its largest municipal acquisition. Investors are already concerned about your recent absences. I missed 2 meetings. For medical appointments related to this search. My schedule is not a board matter. It becomes one when uncertainty affects leadership. Maris's face hardened. There it is. What? The reason you came. Dorian opened a folder. The governance committee has requested an updated medical capacity review. Based on what? Your decision to spend company resources on a private investigation. The expenses are personal. You are using a company audit right to examine a system we designed. Gerald believes Mr. Hale manipulated you into granting access. Jonah looked at him. What exactly did I manipulate her into doing? Reopening settled medical conclusions. That is not manipulation. You lost your wife because of a medical record error. Jonah's hands became still. Dorian knew. Someone had examined his personnel history. That loss understandably affects your judgment, Dorian continued. Maris's voice became quiet. Do not use his wife. I am explaining a conflict. You are using grief to discredit evidence. I am trying to prevent your personal fixation from damaging Bellamy's civic. Maris moved closer to the table. My fixation? Dorian exhaled. You have spent 3 years adapting to reality. This file offers a story in which every difficult thing that followed the accident could have been avoided. That story is seductive. You think I believe a folder will make me walk. I think you want to. Jonah saw the sentence strike her. Dorian saw it too. He softened his voice. There is no shame in wanting that. Maris looked toward the window. Jonah spoke before he could decide whether he should. She has never asked me whether she will walk. Dorian turned. This is not your conversation. You made me part of it. Maris looked at Jonah. He continued. She asked whether the record was complete. That is a different question. Dorian closed the folder. The capacity review occurs next Friday. Until then, I strongly advise you to stop using company authority in this investigation. And if I don't, the board may restrict your executive access temporarily while you complete the Harbor Link merger. Dorian's expression did not change. The merger would transfer Bellamy Civic's infrastructure division to a global conglomerate. Dorian had supported it for months. Maris had opposed it because the buyer intended to close several public interest programs. That transaction is separate, he said. No, it becomes easier if I am removed. You appointed me to protect this company. I appointed you because my father trusted you. And I have spent 14 years honoring that trust. Maris looked at him. My father also trusted Dr. Kessler. Dorian stood. End this before it takes more from you than it gives. After he left, Maris remained silent. Jonah began closing his laptop. What are you doing? She asked. Giving you privacy. I didn't ask for it. He waited. Maris looked at the bent heron. Do you believe I expect to walk? I don't know. You always say you don't know. When I don't, it is irritating. Yes, she turned the figurine between her fingers. I have dreamed about walking twice since the accident. Both times I woke angry. Jonah stayed quiet. The first year, therapists measured everything. Muscle response, temperature, pressure, pain, every tiny change became a conversation. Then the doctors concluded there was no meaningful pathway. Her voice remained flat. I ended the aggressive therapy because it consumed my life. I learned the chair. I rebuilt my home. I returned to the company. I stopped waiting for a different body. Jonah listened. Now you have brought me a sentence written by a dead technician. I brought you a missing record. Do you understand the difference from my side? Yes, no. You understand the words. She looked at him. If the file means nothing, I will have spent weeks allowing strangers to examine the worst days of my life. If it means something, I will have to live with what was lost because no one acted. Jonah lowered his eyes. That may be worse, she said. Yes, Maris seemed surprised. You agree? Truth doesn't guarantee relief. Then why pursue it? Because the decisions are yours only if the information is yours. The room became quiet. Maris looked at him differently after that. Not with trust. Trust came slowly for her. But she no longer saw him as a man trying to rescue her from the life she had built. He was protecting her right to understand how that life had been decided. The property bag number led them to a retired nurse named Evelyn Marr. She had supervised the trauma floor during Maris's admission. Evelyn agreed to meet at a quiet cafe outside the city. She remembered the patient identity mix-up. 2 women arrived within an hour, she said. Maris Bellamy and Marion Bell. Similar names. Same floor. The system went down during the storm. Were their records combined? Jonah asked. For approximately 40 minutes. Could Maris's surgical file have been labeled under Marion? Yes, did you correct it? I corrected what I found. What did you not find? Evelyn looked toward Maris. The neurological technician brought me a blue folder after the surgery. He was upset. Why? Maris asked. He said the final report in the electronic chart did not match his raw readings. Jonah leaned closer. Did he mention an MRI? Yes, he wanted immediate imaging because the signals changed after closure. After the surgical wound was closed? Yes. What could that mean? I was a trauma nurse, not a surgeon. But you understood his concern. He believed something was compressing the cord after the operation. Maris became still. Did you tell Dr. Kessler? I called the surgical floor. A resident said an MRI had already been requested. It was canceled. I learned that later. Who canceled it? Evelyn looked down at her coffee. The system showed your father's authorization. My father? He was your medical proxy while you were sedated. My father was not a doctor. No. Why would he cancel imaging? I don't believe he did. Jonah asked. Who entered the authorization? The account belonged to Dr. Kessler. Maris's hand tightened around the wheel rim. Evelyn continued. The next morning, I tried to locate the blue folder. It had disappeared. I reported it to patient safety. What happened? Gerald Pike came to the floor. The hospital's lawyer. Yes, he said the technician's report was preliminary and could cause confusion. He instructed us to rely on the finalized chart. Did you accept that? Maris asked. No. Then why didn't you contact me? Evelyn's face filled with shame. I had worked at St. Aldwyn for 28 years. Gerald said disclosing an unverified report could violate privacy law and expose me personally. My husband had just retired. We depended on my health insurance. Maris looked away. Evelyn's voice shook. I told myself the surgeons knew more than I did. I told myself the report probably changed nothing. Did you believe that? Jonah asked. I wanted to. She reached into her bag. I kept this. It was a photocopy of the blue folder's transfer sheet. The page carried Evan Rusk's technician code, ER7, and the optical disc reference number. The Meridian Archive could now locate the raw recording without searching 12,000 discs. Maris stared at the number. Why keep it? Evelyn answered quietly. Because every time I tried to throw it away, I imagined someone asking me why I had. The Meridian Archive found the disc 2 days later. It was transported under legal supervision to an independent neurological laboratory. Doctor. Amara Chen reviewed the recording alongside Maris's existing scans. The meeting took place in Maris's study. Jonah sat near the wall. Rosa remained by the door. Dr. Chen appeared on the screen with a second specialist beside her. The signals recorded during your operation were abnormal, she said, but they were present below the injured level. Maris's face revealed nothing. What does that mean? It means your injury should not have been classified as physiologically complete based on this data. Could I have walked? No one can answer that. Could immediate treatment have changed the outcome? Possibly. Maris looked toward Jonah. He remained still. Doctor, Chen opened an old scan. This image was taken 2 days after surgery. It shows swelling around the spinal cord. The quality is limited. The canceled MRI would have been clearer. Yes, what do you believe happened? Doctor, Chen chose each word carefully. A fragment of damaged bone or a postoperative blood collection may have continued compressing the cord. Over time, scar tissue formed around the area. Is it still there? We need current imaging. And if it is? Surgery might relieve some compression. It would not reverse the original injury. After 3 years, recovery would be uncertain. Could there be no recovery? Yes. Could surgery make me worse? Yes. Could I die? The risk is low, but not zero. Maris absorbed every answer. Not one was comforting. That mattered. False hope usually arrived wrapped in certainty. Doctor. Chen offered none. What signs would suggest preserved function? Jonah asked. Changes in sensation. Voluntary muscle activity. Certain reflex patterns. Maris looked at him sharply. He had noticed the occasional movement in her left foot when she transferred. He had said nothing. What? She asked. Jonah hesitated. Your left foot presses against the plate sometimes. That is a spasm. Probably? I don't know. Maris looked toward Dr. Chen. Could I be evaluated? Yes, the examination was scheduled for the following morning. The results were small. So small that another team might have dismissed them. Maris could not move her legs on command. But she could distinguish pressure in 2 areas previously marked as insensate. When Dr. Chen placed her left ankle at a certain angle, one muscle activated weakly. Not a reflex. A voluntary response. Maris watched the monitor. The line rose, then disappeared. Again, Doctor, Chen said. Maris tried. Nothing. She tried once more. The line moved. Less than a second. Jonah stood at the back of the room. He did not smile. Maris appreciated that. The movement was not walking. It was not recovery. It was information. The next loop opened before the first one could close. Doctor, Chen ordered a high-resolution MRI. The scan showed a dense band of scar tissue and a small bone fragment pressing against the spinal cord. Removing it might reduce pain and improve function. It might do nothing. Maris had a choice she should have been offered 3 years earlier. Before she could decide, St. Aldwyn filed a legal complaint against Jonah. The hospital accused him of stealing the brass heron and disclosing protected medical information for financial benefit. Gerald Pike requested a criminal investigation. Jonah's contracting agency formally blacklisted him. 2 news websites published stories describing him as a grieving records worker who had manipulated a disabled billionaire with promises of recovery. The articles included his address. Piper saw a television reporter outside her school. Jonah collected her through the rear entrance. "Why do they think you stole the bird?" she asked inside the car. "Because it left the hospital with me. You didn't mean to take it." "No. Why don't they believe you?" "Because someone wants the story to sound simple." "Are you going to jail?" "I don't think so." "That means maybe." Jonah looked at her in the mirror. "Yes." Piper held her backpack against her chest. "Does Miss Bellamy believe you?" "I don't know." "That is your bad answer." "It is the honest one." At Maris's office, Dorian called an emergency board meeting. He presented the news coverage as evidence that Maris's judgment had become compromised. "The Harbor Link merger expires in 6 days," he said. "Instead of protecting shareholder value, you have allowed a dismissed contractor to use company systems for a personal lawsuit." "This is not a lawsuit," Maris said. "Not yet. Your brother deleted evidence." "That is an accusation. It is supported by the system log." Gerald closed an invalid records notice. He closed it 19 minutes after it was submitted. That does not prove he knew the contents. "He called me the same afternoon." Dorian looked around the table. "Listen to this. A clerical error becomes a conspiracy. A preliminary signal becomes proof of hidden recovery. Every person who questions the story becomes an enemy." Maris's voice became quiet. "You are moving the capacity vote forward. The governance committee has scheduled it for tomorrow, before I decide whether to undergo surgery. Because the decision may leave you unavailable during a critical transaction. The merger should not proceed. You have opposed it for months without offering a viable funding alternative." "I was developing one." "With Jonah Hale?" "No." "Then where is it?" Maris did not answer. Her financial plan was incomplete. Dorian knew that. If the board activates the temporary provision, he continued, "I will lead the company until your medical situation stabilizes. And complete the merger, if necessary." The plan became visible. Dorian did not need Maris to remain permanently removed. He needed 48 hours of control. Enough to sign HarborLink. Enough to dismantle the public infrastructure programs she had refused to sacrifice. The board vote was tied. One director remained undecided. Dorian closed the meeting. End the investigation. Dismiss Jonah Hale. Postpone the surgery until the merger is complete. Show the board you are still capable of separating personal desire from corporate duty. Maris stared at him. "You want me to prove my judgment by accepting yours. I want you to protect what you built. No, you want to own the moment when it changes hands." Dorian left without replying. That evening, Maris terminated Jonah's contract. She did it by email. No explanation. No call. No meeting. Jonah read the message at his kitchen table while Piper completed a spelling worksheet. The contract ended immediately. Payment would cover hours already completed. All records and company equipment had to be returned by morning. Jonah read it twice, then a third time. Piper looked up. "Bad news?" "Yes, from Miss Bellamy?" "Yes." "Did she fire you?" "Yes, why?" She didn't say. Piper placed her pencil down. Call her. No, you told me questions matter. They do. Then ask. Jonah closed the laptop. She made a decision. Maybe someone made it hard. She still made it. Piper looked disappointed. Not in Maris. In him. Mom used to say people say go away when they want to know who will stay. Jonah's face changed. You were 3 when Mom died. Mrs. Cardenas told me. That sentence does not apply to everything. How do you know? Because adults sometimes mean what they say. Do you? He looked at her. When you say you're fine, Piper continued. Do you mean it? That is different. No. She returned to her worksheet. Jonah gathered the audit equipment. He did not call Maris. At 7 the next morning, Rosa arrived at the apartment. She carried no coat despite the cold. Maris needs you. She ended the contract. To protect you. From what? Dorian told her he would submit a child welfare complaint alleging you exposed Piper to confidential information and unstable working conditions. Jonah's face emptied. He threatened my daughter. Yes, and Maris thought firing me would stop him? She believed it would remove his argument. Did it? No, the complaint was filed at 6 this morning. Jonah stood. Piper appeared in the hallway. What complaint? Neither adult answered. Piper looked at Jonah. Is someone trying to take me? No. The answer came too quickly. She heard it. Rosa crouched slightly so they were closer to eye level. Someone wrote something untrue because your father found information they wanted hidden. Can people do that? Yes. Can they take me? Rosa looked at Jonah. He answered honestly this time. They can ask questions. Mrs. Cardenas and your school know you are safe. We will answer everything. Piper swallowed. Is Miss Bellamy scared too? Yes, Rosa said. Then why is she alone? Jonah closed his eyes. Rosa placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a handwritten note from Maris. I made the decision for you because I believed removing you would remove the threat. It did not. You were right about control. I am sorry. Beneath the note was the photograph of the smaller brass heron. Maris had tied a thin purple ribbon around the bent wing. Piper recognized it. That's from my backpack. Rosa took it with permission, Maris's house manager said. Piper touched the photograph. The bird still stands. Jonah looked at the time. When is the board vote? 10. Where is Maris? St. Aldwyn. Why? She is confronting Dr. Kessler before the vote. Jonah reached for his coat. At St. Aldwyn, Maris waited in the same private consultation room where she had been told 3 years earlier that her paralysis was permanent. Dr. Kessler entered with Gerald Pike. Maris's attorney joined remotely. Rosa brought Jonah and Piper through a side entrance. Piper remained with Rosa outside. Jonah entered the room. Gerald's face tightened. This individual is under investigation. This individual is my consultant, Maris said. You terminated him. I corrected that decision. Gerald opened a folder. We have already explained that the newly discovered monitoring record does not establish negligence. You have not explained why you concealed it. It was misplaced. Then why did you delete Jonah's notice? To prevent unauthorized information from entering the official chart before verification. You could have verified it. We began that process. You told me no file existed. Gerald looked toward her attorney's screen. This conversation is becoming adversarial. It became adversarial when your hospital used my father's identity to cancel an MRI. Dr. Kessler looked at Gerald. Gerald said nothing. Maris saw it. You did not know, she said to the surgeon. Dr. Kessler lowered himself into a chair. I knew the imaging had been canceled. I believed your father made the decision after discussing the risks with the team. My father was unconscious in another wing. The room became still. Her father had been riding behind her car when the accident occurred. His vehicle struck debris and overturned. He suffered a head injury and remained unconscious for 2 days. Dr. Kessler's face changed. That was not reflected in the authorization call. There was no authorization call, Jonah said. Gerald turned toward him. You have no basis for that claim. Jonah placed a system report on the table. Bellamy Civic had designed St. Aldwyn's voice authorization archive. Every proxy approval generated an encrypted audio receipt. The MRI cancellation contained no audio. Only a typed override entered through Gerald's administrative account. Maris looked at the hospital lawyer. You canceled it. Gerald remained calm. I authorized delay pending review. Why? The scan required transferring you while medically unstable. Doctor, Kessler had already determined that the injury was complete. Doctor, Kessler stood. I had not made that determination. Gerald looked toward him. The operative summary was finalized the next morning. Based on your findings. Based partly on the monitoring report I was told showed no remaining signals. Jonah understood. The false conclusion had traveled in a circle. The MRI was canceled because the injury was considered complete. The injury was considered complete because the MRI never examined the postoperative compression and the preliminary nerve report disappeared. Every decision supported the next. No single person had needed to invent the entire lie. They only needed to protect the first mistake. Why hide the file? Maris asked. Gerald's voice hardened. You were a 36-year-old public figure whose company held major hospital contracts. Doctor, Kessler had performed a technically successful stabilization under impossible conditions. A preliminary technician's concern did not justify releasing contradictory material before review. You never reviewed it. We intended to. For 3 years? The file was misplaced, and when Jonah found it, Gerald looked toward the window. The legal exposure was substantial. There it was. Not medicine, not uncertainty. Exposure, Dr. Kessler removed his glasses. You knew the signals remained. I knew the technician disputed the final summary. You told me his recording was corrupted. It contained artifacts. You told me the raw disk was unreadable. We could not locate it. You did not try. Gerald stood. This conversation should end. Maris looked at him. It has. Her attorney informed Gerald that an emergency petition had been filed to preserve all hospital systems, communications, and surgical records. Doctor, Kessler agreed to provide a sworn statement. Gerald Pike left the room without another word. Dorian called Maris 6 minutes later. You have destroyed any chance of resolving this quietly. Maris placed the phone on speaker. You knew. I knew Gerald was managing a potential claim. You knew the file existed. I knew there was a disputed report. And you allowed the board to use my prognosis. The prognosis came from multiple doctors, one of whom was given false information. This does not change the company's position. No, it changes yours. Dorian's voice became colder. You have 27 minutes before the board votes. You are in a hospital preparing for high-risk surgery. No responsible director will leave you in control. I am not having surgery today. Then why are you there? To recover something you helped bury. Dorian ended the call. The board meeting began at 10. Maris joined remotely from the consultation room. Jonah sat outside the camera frame. Dr. Kessler and Maris's attorney remained visible. Dorian introduced the motion to activate the temporary incapacity clause. Before the vote, Maris requested 5 minutes. She did not discuss whether she might walk. She did not describe the toe movement or the new MRI. She spoke about governance. 3 years earlier, the board had accepted a medical conclusion produced through incomplete records. Dorian had used that conclusion to expand his authority. He had negotiated Harbor Link while presenting the merger as the only responsible plan for a company led by someone with a permanently deteriorating condition. He had known the conclusion was disputed. The undecided director leaned toward the screen. Are you alleging Dorian caused the medical error? No, Maris said. I am stating that he learned evidence had been concealed and chose to preserve the advantage that concealment gave him. Dorian interrupted. This is unsupported. Dr. Kessler appeared on the screen. It is supported by my testimony. Every director became still. The surgeon explained that he had been told the raw nerve data was corrupted and that Maris's father authorized canceling the MRI. Both claims were false. Maris's attorney then displayed emails obtained that morning through the hospital preservation order. Gerald Pike had informed Dorian about the newly found file before Dorian's first visit to Maris's home. Dorian had replied with 7 words. Do not let this reopen the prognosis. The room went quiet. Dorian looked at the message. It referred to public speculation. You contacted the governance committee 12 minutes later, Maris said. I was protecting the company. You were protecting the merger. The merger saves 20,000 jobs. It eliminates 6,000 to preserve the rest, and transfers control to a buyer that promised you the executive chairmanship. Several directors turned toward him. The compensation agreement appeared on screen. Dorian's future position had not been disclosed to the full board. His calmness finally broke. You cannot fund the company's debt without HarborLink. I can. Maris introduced an alternative financing agreement developed during the previous month with municipal pension funds and public infrastructure partners. The terms provided less money. They preserved Bellamy Civic's independence and prohibited the closure of its emergency water and rural hospital programs. Dorian stared at the figures. You did this without board authorization. I negotiated a proposal. The board will decide. The incapacity vote failed. 9 directors opposed it. 2 abstained. Only Dorian voted in favor. The board then suspended him pending an ethics investigation. The HarborLink merger was rejected. Dorian did not give a speech. He did not apologize. He closed his laptop and disappeared from the screen. Quietly, the way real power often ends. Afterward, Maris remained facing the dark monitor. Jonah entered. You won. No, the vote failed. That is not the same thing. She looked toward her legs. The file was real. Yes, the opportunity may have been real. Yes, and it may be gone. Jonah pulled a chair closer. Dr. Chen said there is still a choice between dangerous surgery and continuing as I am. Yes, you make that sound simple. It isn't. Maris looked at him. What would you do? I don't know. She almost laughed. Of course. It isn't my body. What if it were? It still wouldn't be your answer. Maris lowered her eyes. For 3 years, everyone made decisions around what I could not do. My father changed the company structure. Dorian changed the board. My fiancé changed his mind about our future. Doctors changed the goals of therapy. No one said they were taking something. They said they were being realistic. Jonah listened. If I choose surgery because I want to walk, I become the woman Dorian described. A person unable to accept her life. No, if I refuse it, I may always wonder. Yes, you are not helpful. I am trying not to decide for you. Maris looked at the brass heron photograph on her phone. What did Rachel do when she was frightened? She made lists. Useful lists? Sometimes one listed places she wanted Piper to see. Did you take her? Rachel never finished the list. That was not my question. Jonah recognized his daughter's phrasing. No, I haven't. Why? Because every place feels like proof she isn't there. Maris looked at him. And that protects you? No. The same word passed between them. Her fear of surgery. His fear of continuing a life Rachel could not share. Both had turned refusal into safety. But refusal could protect a wound as easily as it protected dignity. Piper entered carrying the small brass heron. Rosa followed. I told her to wait, Rosa said. She ignored me. Piper placed the figurine on the table between Jonah and Maris. The purple ribbon remained around the bent wing. Dad said you have a choice, Piper said. Jonah frowned. I did not discuss the surgery with you. Rosa did. Rosa looked unapologetic. Piper turned toward Maris. Are you scared? Yes. Do you want to walk? Maris looked at Jonah. He did not rescue her from the question. Yes, she said. Piper nodded. Do you like your chair? Yes. Can both be true? Maris looked at her. Yes. Then why is everybody making it one or the other? No one answered. Piper touched the brass heron. This bird stands. It also leans. Maris's eyes filled. The child continued. You don't have to hate now to try for something different. The sentence was too large for a 7-year-old. Rosa admitted later that Piper had heard her say something similar. That did not make it less true. Maris chose surgery. Not because Jonah promised she would walk. He promised nothing. Not because Dr. Chen guaranteed improvement. She did not. Maris chose it because the decision finally belonged to her. Before the operation, she changed Bellamy Civic's governance rules so no temporary medical absence could be used to complete a major sale. She appointed an independent acting chief executive. She signed no permanent transition. Jonah waited with Rosa and Piper during the 7-hour procedure. Piper folded paper birds from hospital brochures. Jonah checked the clock until Rosa removed his watch and placed it in her bag. "You are making time nervous," she said. At 4:18 in the afternoon, Dr. Chen entered the waiting room. The surgery had removed the bone fragment and much of the compressive scar tissue. The spinal cord had expanded slightly. There were no major complications. No one knew what function might return. Maris woke that evening. Jonah stood beside the window. "You're here," she said. "Yes, Piper?" "With Rosa." "How long?" "Until visiting hours end." "That is not what I meant." Jonah understood. He sat beside the bed. "Tomorrow," he said. "Then we can decide the day after that." Maris closed her eyes. That remains an irritating answer. Yes, her recovery began with nothing. For 12 days, the neurological examination showed no meaningful change. Pain increased. Fatigue overwhelmed her. The news coverage turned cruel. Some commentators described the surgery as an emotional gamble. Others called it an attempt to strengthen her legal claim against the hospital. Maris asked Jonah to remove the television. He did. On the 13th day, she felt cold against the outside of her left ankle. On the 17th, she moved one toe. The motion was so small that Jonah initially believed he imagined it. The therapist asked Maris to try again. Nothing. They waited. She tried a third time. The toe moved. 3 millimeters. Piper celebrated as though Maris had crossed a finish line. Maris did not. She stared at her foot and cried without sound. The missing file had not lied. It had not promised enough to lie. It had only insisted that the case should remain open. Rehabilitation lasted months. Maris returned to work from home. Jonah's criminal investigation ended when the hospital's security footage showed the heron catching inside his coat lining as he collected his gloves. The complaint was dismissed. Saint, Aldwyn placed Gerald Pike on leave. An external review found that he had suppressed the preliminary report to reduce legal risk and later deleted Jonah's notice to prevent the error from being rediscovered during the demolition project. Gerald resigned before the hospital board could remove him. Dr. Kessler publicly accepted responsibility for relying on summaries he had not independently verified. He did not claim that Gerald alone had misled him. "I allowed certainty to replace investigation," he said. Maris respected that sentence more than an excuse. Dorian also resigned from Bellamy Civic. The board recovered several payments connected to his undisclosed HarborLink agreement. Maris did not pursue personal revenge. She changed the systems that had allowed him to gain leverage from her health. Jonah returned to neither St. Aldwyn nor his contracting agency. Maris offered him a permanent executive position at Bellamy Civic. He rejected the first title. Chief Medical Data Integrity Officer sounded, in his opinion, like a department designed by lawyers. "What do you suggest?" Maris asked. They were working in her study while Piper built a cardboard city across the rug. Director of Record Trust. That sounds like a bank. Patient systems. We are not a hospital. We build hospital infrastructure. Vice President of Data Verification. Too many words. Maris stared at him. "You are negotiating the title of a position that did not exist until I created it for you." "That is correct. You remain impossible." Piper raised her hand. "Call it second look." Both adults turned. "That is not a title," Maris said. "It is the program." Jonah considered it. "Second look works." Maris looked at the whiteboard. The idea had begun during the investigation. Hospitals possess thousands of records generated by devices, laboratories, handwritten notes, external vendors, and copied summaries. Once those records entered the official chart, patients rarely knew which source produced each conclusion. The second look platform would preserve the origin of every important result. If a summary contradicted raw data, the system would flag it. If an imaging request was canceled, the patient would receive notice. If an identity mismatch occurred, records could not be quietly overwritten. Most importantly, patients would be able to see when information disappeared. Bellamy Civic invested in the program. Hospitals resisted. Patients did not. Within 2 years, Second Look operated in 31 health systems. It identified duplicate laboratory profiles, unreviewed imaging results, and thousands of documents routed to the wrong clinicians. The platform could not guarantee perfect medicine. Nothing could. It made silence harder to hide. Maris's physical recovery remained slow. The surgery reduced her pain and restored limited voluntary control in both legs. She learned to stand in a support frame. The first attempt lasted 7 seconds. The second lasted 4. The third did not happen because her blood pressure dropped and the therapist ended the session. Maris hated that day. Jonah did not tell her to remain positive. He brought coffee and sat beside her while she complained about the therapist, the frame, the hospital, gravity, and motivational posters. When she finished, he said, "Tomorrow?" She looked at him. Tomorrow, months later, powered braces and parallel bars allowed her to place weight through her legs. The rehabilitation team emphasized that the braces provided most of the stability. Maris appreciated the precision. She was not interested in pretending technology did not matter. Her company had been built on the belief that tools did not reduce human achievement. They expanded choice. Piper attended the session in which Maris attempted her first assisted step. The brass heron stood on a table beside the bars. The purple ribbon had faded. Maris positioned her hands. The braces locked. The therapist stood behind her. Jonah waited to the side. "Do not catch me unless I ask," Maris said. "I know. You look ready to catch me. I have a daughter. It is permanent." Piper called from the safety line. "He catches everyone." Maris shifted her weight. The left brace advanced. Her foot moved forward. The movement was mechanical, voluntary, and supported all at once. It counted. The right leg followed with more difficulty. Maris reached the end of the bars after 6 assisted steps. The distance was less than 12 feet. It took 4 minutes. She lowered into the wheelchair, shaking with exhaustion. The room remained silent. Maris looked toward the brass heron. 6, the therapist said. Maris's voice broke. 6. Piper ran to her after receiving permission. "You walked." With braces. You still walked. With 3 people watching every joint. You still walked. Maris looked at Jonah. He was crying. He did not seem aware of it. "You promised nothing," she said. "Yes, you were very annoying. Yes, you found the file. Yes, but you did not make this happen." "No." She reached for him. "You stayed while I did." Jonah knelt beside the chair. Yes, their first kiss occurred in a rehabilitation laboratory beside a support frame and a child trying unsuccessfully not to watch. It was not elegant. Piper announced afterward that it had taken them too long. Rosa agreed. Maris accused them of conspiring. They did not deny it. A year later, Maris returned to St. Aldwyn, not as a patient. Second Look was being installed across the hospital network under the supervision of an independent oversight board. The old trauma wing had been demolished. A public garden occupied part of the site. At its center stood a narrow reflecting pool where brass birds rested along the edge. Maris brought the small heron. Jonah walked beside her wheelchair. Piper held a new purple ribbon. They placed the figurine on a stone ledge while a photographer prepared for the program announcement. Maris looked at the bent wing. "Should we repair it?" Piper asked. Maris considered the question. "No. Why?" "The damage belongs to its history." Piper touched the uneven feet. "It still stands." Yes, Maris did not leave the wheelchair behind. She did not walk everywhere. On good days, she could take assisted steps with braces and support. On difficult days, transferring from bed required all her strength. Her recovery did not erase disability. It gave her more options inside it. That distinction mattered. The public preferred simpler stories. They wanted the billionaire who walked again, the widowed father who defeated a hospital, the missing file that produced a miracle. The truth was less dramatic and more valuable. A technician recorded a nerve signal. A nurse asked for imaging. A lawyer feared liability. A surgeon trusted a summary. A file entered the wrong folder. A board chairman benefited from certainty. and dozens of people accepted a conclusion because reopening it would have been expensive. Jonah did not save Maris by knowing more than her doctors. He knew less. That was why he kept asking. He did not need to defend a diagnosis, a hospital, a reputation, or a merger. He only needed the missing file to be treated as real. Maris did not regain movement because she learned to be hopeful. She regained some movement because preserved pathways were finally identified, compression was treated, and she completed months of difficult rehabilitation. Hope did not perform the surgery. Hope did not move her legs. But it gave uncertainty enough room to be investigated. The relationship between Maris, Jonah, and Piper developed in the same way, not as rescue, as repeated choice. Jonah learned that remaining loyal to Rachel did not require refusing every future she could not share. Maris learned that accepting help did not require surrendering authority. Piper learned very little, because Piper had understood the important part first. People could love what existed and still reach towards something new. They could use a wheelchair and want to walk. They could grieve one family and build another. They could be frightened and move anyway. 3 years after Jonah discovered the file, the brass heron sat on the desk of the home they shared. Not Maris's old river house. Not Jonah's apartment. A new place chosen by all three of them. It had wide doors, a small workshop, a room where Piper built models, and a kitchen table large enough for Rosa and Mrs. Cardenas to argue about food during holidays. The heron leaned slightly. The purple ribbon remained around its wing. One winter evening, Jonah returned from a second-look installation and found Maris standing in her support frame near the study window. Piper stood beside her counting. 28, Piper said. Maris's legs trembled. 29. Jonah placed his bag down. Do you need help? No, 30. Maris lowered carefully into the wheelchair. Piper cheered. Jonah kissed Maris's forehead. New record? By 3 seconds. That is significant. It is 30 seconds. Both can be true. Maris looked toward the brass heron. The figurine had remained inside a missing medical file for 3 years. No one knew who placed it there. Perhaps a nurse had slipped it inside for safekeeping. Perhaps a technician picked it up from the floor. Perhaps it simply followed the paper when 2 patients' belongings became mixed. The explanation no longer mattered. The heron had carried no cure. It had carried a number. The number led to a property log. The log led to a nurse. The nurse led to a disc. The disc returned a choice that should never have been taken. That was how lives changed most often. Not through one grand act. Through small facts that refused to disappear completely. Maris turned toward Jonah. What would have happened if you had followed instructions? I would have left the file on Denise's desk. You did. I would have accepted that it disappeared. You did not. No. Why? Jonah looked toward Piper, who was tying another ribbon around a cardboard bird. Because Rachel's result disappeared once. Maris took his hand. You could not change what happened to her. I know. Do you believe that now? He thought before answering. More than I did. Maris nodded. That was enough. Healing rarely arrived as certainty. Sometimes it arrived as a smaller burden. A door no longer locked. A question finally answered. A step taken with support. A future discussed one day at a time. This was not a rescue. It was refusal. Jonah refused to let a missing document become an accepted silence. Maris refused to let other people define acceptance as surrender. Together, they refused the idea that dignity depended on walking, wealth, professional authority, or never needing anyone. The file changed her medical future. The truth changed her company. But the knock on her door changed something neither medical records nor board votes could measure. It reminded her that being seen was different from being studied, that staying was different from controlling, and that the people who returned without promises were often the ones worth building a life beside. Piper placed her cardboard bird beside the brass heron. It leans too, she said. Jonah examined it. One leg is shorter. I know. Do you want me to fix it? No, why? Piper looked at Maris. It already knows how to stand. Maris smiled. Outside, snow began settling over the quiet street. Inside, the lights remained warm. The file was no longer missing. Neither were they. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe and share it with someone who has ever been told that their future was already decided. Then tell me in the comments, would you have obeyed the hospital or knocked on her door?